Hello and welcome to the AUBG Office Hours podcast.
Thank you.
Today's guest is someone very special. I used to hear stories about this professor back in my freshman year when I was switching over from computer science to economics, as I thought it would be more interesting for me to follow. And today we have on the show Professor Didar Erdinc. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I need you first to answer a few quick questions for me about you being here at AUBG, and the first thing, and some prior information. So, can you tell us more about your education and where you got your degrees?
I was born and raised in Istanbul, and after completing high school, it was difficult to enter to that high school English curriculum, and one of the good schools in Istanbul. I took, of course, a university entrance exam and won a seat in Bosphorus University Economics department. So I started my studies at the undergraduate level as an econ or economics major. And you probably know that Bosphorus University is the graduate, or the university version of the Robert College, which was actually built by American missionaries in the 1880s, and on a piece of land allocated by the Sultan, Ottoman Sultan, by the Bosphorus. And of course, after a while, the university has been established in, I think, 1971, again, as a continuation of that high school. So the university was really quite well known also across the world, in a way, I can say that. So once I completed my degree in economics, I applied for a Ph.D. program at the University of Southern California. And of course, I was in need of a scholarship, as you can imagine. An expensive university it was, located in Los Angeles. And I started my Ph.D. program. Again in economics, and once I completed my degree, I wanted to be back to the region, and here it was, AUBG was advertising for a position in economics department, so I applied. Initially, I wasn't so sure that I would stay or will be so well received at the university and in general in Bulgaria. But to my amazement and great surprise, first I, of course, loved the students who interviewed me when I was here the very first time in 1996, March. Can you imagine how many years have passed? And flying directly from Los Angeles to Sofia, I was welcomed by an AUBG student. I still remember his name, Julian, and he took me with a driver to AUBG, the main building. After a 2-hour bumpy ride, the roads were not so good at that time, and I met lots of students and gave a presentation, a talk on my research paper, and I was so warmly welcomed that I wanted to actually give it a try, at least for a while. And of course I spoke with my family, and at that time my mother was very much actually supportive of that, and she said to me, I remember still, that please go there, and if you can contribute in any way to Komshu, that would be really a good thing for you to do after years of staying in the States. So she was happy for that reason, and of course for being close to the region and to Istanbul. And that's how my story at AUBG started, really.
That's a lot to unpack, but okay. That segues really well into the next questions. Like, So you came in 1996, is that correct?
1997 January, and that was another very interesting, if I may say a few words about it, very interesting landing on Bulgarian soil again, because there were some protests, because that was the time when I was supposed to start working at AUBG once, of course, the procedures have been completed, and I got my job offer and met with faculty overall at AUBG. So met the president, Julia Watkins at the time, and I started. I believe the university as a faculty member the spring semester of 1997, but I landed from Los Angeles in January 17 of 1997, and there were huge protests in Sofia at the time. I think it was. They were protesting. People were really having great difficulty in coping with the changes, the transition, and they were protesting near the parliament, and I could hear the sound of those protests. And of course, again, I asked Julian, I said, what's going on? And said, Professor, that's what is really happening. People are demanding more democracy, better conditions of living. And I said, well, who could blame them? So, and I said, what are you doing here? Well, I'm meeting you. Go there and protest. If there is such a need, then probably you should do that. That's how it all started. And then I started working the very first semester. I remember I was teaching financial markets and institutions class in addition to principles of macroeconomics at that time. And of course, students were asking me great many questions regarding how things would, correct itself, the problems would be solved. And I said, if the government has the intention and willingness and commitment to adopt the right kind of economic policies, you will see in a very short period of time things will actually look much better. And at that time, I believe in February, the inflation was running so high, the monthly inflation rate was in excess of 300% in Bulgaria. So you can imagine the distress the Bulgarian families were feeling at that time, and the difficulties also our students were having in terms of meeting the ends, meeting the ends.
Yeah.
This was a very difficult situation. But again, in May, towards May, a variety of different regulations and new institutions were adopted, including the establishment of the currency board and the new banking law, and things started to stabilize in the banking sector and macroeconomically, and inflation was tamed, and of course our students started to look to a brighter future. And since then, everything improved drastically. As you know, one culmination of this process was the accession of Bulgaria to the European Union in 2007. So a long path. Wow. And I've been affiliated with the university for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of it.
What a time probably it was to be learning economics, actually. Not that today it isn't, but wow. I'm guessing what my classmates thought back then.
They are holding great positions in Sofia, and I'm still in contact with them. Some of them are working at BNB, Bulgarian National Bank, or Bulgarska Narodna Bankata, as it is called.
Yeah.
So they are really holding great positions all across the country. So I'm very proud of them.
So I guess there's no point to ask. You're part of the economics department. This is much as apparent. You said you gave, back in the day, you gave financial markets and you taught macroeconomics, but what do you teach today?
Today, I am mostly, I would say, intent on teaching courses related to econometrics, a subfield of broader economics field. And I teach financial econometrics, which has been developed in the last 4 or 5 years. I think I launched this course as a new course because of the demand from the students 4 years ago. And 7, 8 years ago, I believe, I introduced time series econometrics. But since I believe 2000, Econometrics 1, Eco 310, as you know it, has been a required course in economics, because I really insisted on it being so, because it's so useful for not only economics majors, but also all other social sciences, including business administration. And in the meantime, also introduced an Econometrics 311. It's the second part of the economics course. So I teach 4 different econometrics courses in addition to supervising a variety of senior thesis projects, by the economics students.
Yeah, and so can you kind of give an explanation of what econometrics is to someone who hasn't heard that term before?
Econometrics actually uses tools, both mathematical and statistical, in order to assess empirically the validity of a variety of different social science theories. So it is based on some software program. I mean, we use Stata software to be able to conduct empirical research. So it's a great field, has been developing and I would say really burgeoning in the last 20, 30 years in particular. And it has great many applications, I can say. Very much advanced right now, quite well developed. So that's what we are using, as our tools. But of course, we have to see whether such theories are really confirmed based on actual data. So we analyze data in great detail using different tools of econometrics, time series, or cross-sectional tools to be able to generate some sensible, quantifiable results to see whether really the expected theoretical priors are confirmed when we face data.
So you would say these are the skills that we gain from these courses are really applicable to what is then sought for in the real world, in the job market.
Absolutely. I cannot imagine an economics major or a student majoring in economics without such quantitative skills, not to mention software skills in applied work, in empirical work, because this is really very much in demand currently by the corporations, think tanks, and also, of course, like major institutions like the central banks. So that's why there is a great deal of need
and as you say, it's not
for acquiring such skills.
Yeah, and as you say, it's not just in economics, it's also in other social sciences, and especially in business.
And political science has been increasingly producing journal articles applying all these tools that you have been exposed to as a student in my econometrics courses, like, we see instrumental variable estimation, probit logit models, just to name a few, applied or GMM estimation applied in the context of political science. So we see more and more papers produced and journal articles produced with applied work in political science, because that is also understandable to see how variety of different theories are confirmed or rejected for the same reason. We have to really face the data.
Data. There was a saying. What was it? Data says it all, or data is God, something like that.
Yes.
Okay, but this is not all of your contribution to AUBG. There's also the EMBA program. So, can you tell us more about its founding and what your role in it is?
Sure. Briefly, I can say that I believe it was the year 2002 when we were given the go-ahead, the green light to establish a program at the master's level. A group of us, group of faculty actually met with the provost at the time at the EDF Center, and we started creating the program from scratch. Of course, we studied quite in detail similar programs elsewhere, in particular, more specifically in the States. And the idea was to offer Bulgarian executives a chance to improve their understanding of the business environment by providing a rigorous, sound program. And it was designed especially for working adults at various managerial positions working in Bulgaria. And of course, it wasn't limited to only to the Bulgarian audience, but also the neighboring countries. So that's how it started. And of course, we spent a great deal of time in order to get accredited or, American accreditation, Bulgarian accreditation. We really sought these stamps of approval, if I may say so, and worked diligently to generate a great program. I'm very much behind it. It has been going great since its inception.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. You say that it's not just about the Bulgarian community here, it's also like neighboring countries. Have you had a lot of students who are...
Yes, currently, for instance, I'm teaching at EMBA, and we have 3 Albanian students. I believe one is from Kosovo.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, and one is from Taiwan. So I have a student by the name of Shane, as he likes to be called, and Shane is from Taiwan. And I believe we are getting more international.
That's good. And what do you teach there, actually? What is the...
I teach managerial economics. Again, provide foundations of some economic principles that are extremely useful, could prove extremely useful for managers at different ranks or with different backgrounds. So I try to offer a course where case studies are, of course, quite important so that they see how, as a manager, they are going to apply all these economics concepts in order to improve the performance of the companies that they work for at, again, different levels, at marketing, financing, at top managerial positions. Of course, I cannot imagine, again, a manager without some knowledge, sound knowledge of how interest rates might influence their decisions and or inflation can interfere with their pricing and costs and so on and so forth. So I believe it's a very useful course. At least that is the feedback that I receive from the graduates or those who took my course in managerial economics in their second year at the EMBA. Yeah, they provide positive feedback.
It spans 1.5 years, right? Something like that, or 2?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, right, you say that it's developed and it's going really well right now. But back when it was founded, was there a lot of demand for this, like especially from young executives?
Well, it has been some time, but as far as I remember, initially, of course, there was great interest because it was a program offered by American University in Bulgaria. And given our success and visibility, if I may say so, at the undergraduate level, we were expected to offer a credible program. And that was the reason, I believe, even in the first year, we had in the order of, if I'm not mistaken, 15 to 18 students when we launched the program, and that was considered viable, financially and economically, and we started like that initially. And of course, now currently I have around 30 students in this cohort. So that shows that there is steady and consistent demand for our program in Sofia, and it is very well received. Hopefully, it's going to influence our decision to offer more such graduate level programs. I think we have the capacity, and the faculty is prepared to launch some other programs at the master's level. Of course, that has to be decided at the board level after some thorough marketing research to assess demand for a variety of different programs. But we are willing to do so if there is a go-ahead at the at the top level. I think we are ready to launch such programs. We have the manpower to do that, to offer programs at the master's level.
In what fields may those be, or is that not something that...
Well, I can imagine a master's program in finance or in economics or public policy. I think these could be interesting additions.
Good. Okay. So this is related to the 20th anniversary of the EMBA, which is being celebrated this year throughout. It's come a long way. Can you kind of mention a few noteworthy events, maybe what is happening to celebrate this
I believe there will be a gala to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the EMBA program, in addition to a variety of meetings and scheduled with the companies, with our former contacts and all those parties related to the development of EMBA program. I think we are going to get in touch with those parties who were so supportive of our program over the years. So I think that's going to be the 20th year anniversary.
And still going strong. Well,
it is.
We hope it continues so into the future.
Hope so.
Now, I want to kind of take this back a little bit to something you mentioned in the start of our conversation about your education and about your. As I know this, you mentioned this in class. Just for the record, I took Econometrics 1, which we already mentioned, with Professor Erdinc, and I'm currently taking the Financial Econometrics class. And I remember in one of the classes you mentioned that before you went to the USA, you had this job offer, or was it something like an internship at a bank, and you kind of refused that in order to pursue your education. And I remember back in class, I found that moment really interesting because I was thinking, what kind of made you decide to stick to it and not go into a career?
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. At the time when I was graduating, there was great interest by the American banks in Istanbul market, in Turkish market in particular. And I was graduating from a good, well-known university, and they were after us, literally. Because I was also a good student, they interviewed me. They wanted to interview. This was Chase Manhattan Bank. And at that time, I think this was in April, couple of months before graduation. I was expected to graduate in June. And at that time, I also received, probably a week ago, before this interview, full scholarship from USC to continue with the Ph.D. program, or to start the Ph.D. program. But nevertheless, because I promised them, I went to the interview, and there were two questions. I think I mentioned that in class.
Yeah, you said that.
One was related to macroeconomics, and they wanted to kind of test my knowledge on how interest rates and exchange rates are related to each other. What is the effect of raising interest rates on exchange rates, and can I elaborate on it, and so on. I was sort of expecting such questions. And then the second question was on serial correlation, which we cover in detail in econometrics. That was surprising. And I tried to explain it in a few words because that was the expectation from them, like hit the crux of the matter kind of an interview. It was an excellent interview. I mean, I really liked the way they interviewed me. And I explained serial correlation, so that's why econometrics can be very important. And then they later said that they will give me a chance to stay, wait for a few minutes outside. Then they will come back. They will ask me in, and I waited. And then I entered the room again. And they said that they wanted to work with me, and they will send me to London to a banking school for 2 years. And upon my, when I returned, they would employ me at the Istanbul branch, a major headquarter, so to speak, that they were building. And I turned to them and I said, "I'm very, very sorry. I didn't want to, be rude, impolite, so I accepted your interview offer, and I had accepted it some time ago. But now I received good news that I would go and study economics, starting a program at USC for a Ph.D. degree." And they turned to me in amazement and said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure, because I want to be in the academic world." And they were so surprised. I could see it in their faces. But they said, "You are probably going to be in a few years at a managerial position once you complete your the degree in banking school in London and start working for us for a few years," because that was the condition, of course. And I said, "I'm pretty sure. I'm very, very sorry." But they were very nice, and that's how we said, how we departed. That was the story which I shared with you.
So it was predetermined. It was not like you were torn on this.
In a way, I can say that. But I do try to also do research, if that's something of interest to you, on Bulgarian banks, in general macroeconomic areas, and of course using econometrics a great deal in my research. When I joined AUBG, I found myself very much involved in trying to explain what is really happening in emerging economies, transitional economies like Bulgaria. So I was drawn into that field of research. And of course, I do really thank some of my students who are now working at EMBA and other places for helping out assisting me with such research and finding data, going through the statistics office, Bulgarian statistics office, and other places to generate data. So it was a nice collaboration. So I do research. I do research on the financial sector.
That was going to be my next question. Earlier you mentioned that when you came in, there was this process, the time of hyperinflation in Bulgaria, and you were kind of directed to, or you headed to doing research on Bulgaria.
Currency board in particular, initially.
Did that kind of did the event of you coming here, did that kind of influence this decision to go to do research particularly on these economic systems, or was it just out of pure interest?
I was always interested in emerging economies, definitely, even when I was in the States. We had a very sound program in both econometrics and development economics. So I was very much interested in how economies can actually generate very fast growth in order to catch up with the Western, more affluent societies. So I believe that that's one way of improving the lot of the people living in somehow more disadvantaged areas. So I think Bulgaria provided me with a unique opportunity to see how variety of economic theories can be applicable in order to improve the conditions, the welfare of the Bulgarian society. An important component of that is the financial sector, because unless financial sector in particular, or more specifically banking sector, is not functioning properly, it is very difficult to, support the growth process in a country like Bulgaria on its path to transition towards the market economy, because this was like a couple of years after the collapse of communism in Bulgaria, and all these institutions were quite rudimentary and not well prepared for the market system. Obviously, there was an incredible amount of change, structural change needed, institutional change needed to foster market-oriented growth process in the country. So that's how I actually got interested on working on Bulgarian context. And initially, I studied in some detail and produced some publications on the currency board. Why it was the best option for Bulgaria, I still think that it was the very right, probably the best decision, one of the best decisions of the government at the time, adopted by the government at the time. It really sustained and maintained macroeconomic stability, incredibly useful and instrumental in actually creating a stable inflation and stability in the economy in general. And of course, it facilitated integration of Bulgarian economy to the European Union. And I believe it was also very instrumental for Bulgarian accession to the European Union, because that's a condition for accession or being admitted as a member for the European Union. And in the meantime, of course, Currency Board was supported with those laws, like the banking law, new banking law. I think it was adopted in June 1997 after a major turbulence in the banking sector with the collapse of so many banks. I believe it really paved the way for sound growth in credit and efficient allocation of credit, which is a precondition for economic growth in any economy. So those were the right decisions, right policies or laws and regulations adopted by the Bulgarian governments at the time, and we see the result of those. So it's a unique case. I wouldn't say. I think Currency Board in a way is a unique case, because I don't see any other emerging European country which adopted that route except Bulgaria.
Can you kind of elaborate on the Currency Board for those who don't know? Like, what is the main function?
The main function of the Currency Board is to control the money supply and back it with the amount of foreign reserves to support the amount of currency in circulation. For instance, it is not possible to print excessive amount of Bulgarian levs unless it is backed by the foreign currency reserves at the BNB. So it is, of course, there's this fixed exchange rate system, which is an integral part of it. €1 is about 1.96 levs, Bulgarian levs, and therefore it's like almost 2 to 1. Monetary base is therefore under the rigid control of the BNB. I mean the currency in circulation and plus the bank reserves, the definition of monetary base. So the entire monetary base of the Bulgarian monetary system is covered fully and even in excess by the foreign currency reserves of the BNB. So there's no risk of depreciation of the currency. It is de facto a euro system because of this fixed exchange rate system. Even though it's not, the country is not using, of course, it's the currency is leva, but de facto, because of this fixed exchange rate regime, it's de facto it's a euro-based system.
Yeah. And it's these things they're all very interesting, and we cover most of these things especially in the macroeconomic courses. And I remember back in Econometrics 1, we also, for our final project, we did this analysis of the Euribor rates and kind of compared
Excellent
them.
question.
It's not a question, but I'm just giving a comment. But yeah, it's
we studied.
We study
we studied in Econometrics 310. I like my students to work on a project on interest rate convergence process. Especially, I pick a number of countries and ask my students to team up in order to work on a country of their choosing, to see how, for instance, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, those countries are European Union members, but they are not still part of the Eurozone. They do not use formally the euro. So we wanted to know, or we search and explore in that project, whether they are really converging in terms of their interest rates to the European Eurozone, because that's a condition for accession to the Eurozone. Interest rates should be, nominal rates should be converging to the Eurozone. Among other criteria, that's an important condition. And I think Bulgaria, as we have proved over and over again, has fulfilled that criterion quite successfully, thanks to partly, I would say, to the currency board and its maintenance and successful operation since its inception. It's an interesting, I think, project for the students. They love to do it, and they do it very successfully. I'm very grateful for that. They're interested in it.
Very interesting, just like as an exercise, but it's also the application of everything that we've kind of been learning throughout the whole course, and then to see it actually play out.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So I think we can take another step back and maybe talk about how you actually got into economics, because I'm interested to hear because it's a field that it's a bit different from I think, at least in today's perspective from what I know from my peers, it's a bit different from business because it's more of a macroscopic scope. So what kind of led you to it? What attracted you to the study?
Well, actually, I have to be honest with you. Even though I was interested in reading about, the conditions of the human beings, how we can improve them, and so on, even at high school level, I was interested in reading novels on the social conditions of people, how they may change over time historically. I was a great fan of Russian classics and so on. Wow. But my family has been traditionally a family of doctors. So they were expecting me to be a medical doctor like my older brother. But one day he brought some bones taken from a cadaver and showed them to me, and I said, well, that's it, I'm not going to do it. And I said, well, this is what you're going to study, and so on. Anyways, I was, of course, probably like, this was his first year in the medical school, and I was 4 years younger, probably the first year of my high school studies. And I really got a bit concerned because I said, and he also added, lots of misery, people in pain and suffering and so on. I said, probably I'm not fit for that, because I really cannot handle people suffering, even though I keep my cool and everything, but it's really not a pretty sight. So I started exploring an alternative area to adopt as my profession, even though I really like still helping people, medically even, and I did so for my family, for my mother, and so on. I'm not that bad, actually. I'm quite skillful, it seems, in generating some medical assistance. But on the other hand, really, I was very much influenced by the education provided at the high school. We were debating such concepts in my English courses, like the Marxist dictum, like religion is the opium of masses, and so on. And our English teacher would ask us to elaborate on the meaning of this. And it was a great course. Of course, in those courses, we debated those issues and social issues as well. So I began to think about how I can help the humankind, if I may, in any way, apart from providing medical assistance. And I said, well, how about improving their material conditions? And the best fit for that was economics, because it's a science which studies how best we improve the material conditions of the human beings. So that's its major goal, and managing the scarcity of resources. That is economics. That's what it is about. Maybe it is silent on the spiritual satisfaction of the human beings, but I believe material conditions also matter for human happiness and welfare. Therefore, I thought that I could be of use, because I was also interested in math. I was good at math, and I could, bring together all these skills and really make a contribution. And of course, academic work and working at the university as a faculty member, helping students learn something useful, that gives a great deal of satisfaction in the process.
Did the your love for academic work, did it spur when you started to study this, or was it because you just had a general interest and knowledge?
I started, actually, if I understand your question correctly, from day one, I was interested in, when I started undergraduate program at the Bosphorus University in economics, I was fascinated by the first courses I took. I mean, there were so many great courses offered, following closely the American economics curriculum. So I really liked the way it was taught. There was a great environment where democracy prevailed, unlike other parts of the of the country. The university was really very democratic in terms of the way you could participate in the classrooms and provide your opinions. So no question was a stupid question, and you could debate everything from different angles. I really liked that in the economics department at that time, and still I think it follows that tradition. So I want to really stay in academia, because it was really, an environment where brilliant people exchange ideas. And I said, well, isn't this interesting and stimulating and challenging? Then later on, of course, upon when I actually started PhD program, I could realize how hard and difficult it could be. It was really demanding at the PhD level. Economics programs are quite demanding at the PhD level. Could be highly mathematical. So that was a bit of a disappointment for me, but I realized later on why such a rigor is necessary at the graduate school, because unless you have the ability to understand models, learning such techniques, math skills, and so on, it's not possible to enlighten the students and teach them anything useful. So that, I think, is the reason, part of the reason, in addition to research in the field of economics. That was my main, I would say, motivation to go into the graduate school.
Okay. Imagine I'm a student who's gonna attempt something like this. What advice would you give me if I decide to if I'm an economics student going to academia, and even if I wouldn't? So what would be your main advice to someone who wants to get into this field?
In the area of economics?
In the area of academics in general.
In general. Well, first of all, it's, of course, a great environment in the sense that you can really always improve the scientific knowledge. You have a chance to do that, produce something new. So it's not a repetitive job. But it's also a highly demanding job. To be in academia means that you are supposed to continually read, learn, and when given a chance, produce results and papers and scientific, outcome. So there's actually quite a heavy burden on academicians. If you really want to do research while teaching and getting involved with other requirements of your university in terms of service, yes, it is quite a challenge and time-consuming process, not to mention the long education process. When you start the PhD program, it's not only taking courses at the advanced level, but also writing a dissertation, as you already know. And that's a very lonesome process. I mean, you are just basically on your own. Yes, there is supervision by your supervisor, PhD supervisor, but you have to be committed enough to see it through and see the light at the end of the tunnel and complete that process. It's a solitary process, requires a great deal of dedication. If you're prepared to do that, after the completion, I think it's a great job, especially if you love teaching and helping others, something useful. If you can, for instance, that gives me great pride and satisfaction when I see my students going to graduate school and landing on great jobs in Europe and the States as professors. I really feel quite proud and gratified. And similarly, when my students go to or get great jobs in Europe and again in Bulgaria at the company level, making a change and difference in the society in particular, I really feel very, very proud because however small, I must have played a role in this process. And that, I think, is probably the biggest satisfaction because it's not, financial satisfaction that you're seeking here. If that's what you have in mind, I don't think that that's the route you should take because as a university professor, someone staying in academia, I think you can never hope to be as your generation will call rich. This wasn't our major motivation when we started. I mean, at least my generation or people, like-minded people. So that's what I can tell you.
I've heard that before, and from another professor too, that back in the day when you were going out into the world to find what you're gonna do, later on in life. It never was with this material, like, or mostly it wasn't with this material idea.
Well, at least for our generation, I think that was not the major issue because we weren't raised in an environment like this. I mean, when I remember my mother and my family were more interested in seeing me in a good job, but in a good profession and getting the right kind of education for acquiring a useful profession. So as my mother would say, useful profession, are you somebody, in the society in terms of having a good profession? That was the more important thing. I never for instance, heard from my family that, you have to go out there to the world and start earning tons of money. So money was never the issue, and it wasn't something to talk about. I remember, it was considered not so proper to talk about money and how much you make in your profession. And I think that has also changed a lot because I remember I was flying once from Europe to New York, I believe, for a conference, and somebody was sitting next to me and said, "Where are you working?" "I'm working there." "How much money you make?" So I said, "Well, as a principal, I don't like to talk about money." And then he stopped talking about it, but I still feel uncomfortable talking about that. Those issues.
Yes, yeah, I understand.
But I think what is more important for a young person is that, you really have to find some a profession that is best suited or, best for your interests. Really, if you don't like the job or the profession, you're not going to be good at it to begin with. So it is important to identify your areas or your interest areas and then see how you're going to excel in it or at least attempt to do so. That I think is the beginning. It should be the first motivation before landing on a job or in a profession. And then I think the financial reward will come later, if there is any, and that's I don't think that's the most important thing for human happiness. Having the earning a great deal of money.
Yet we measure it on the macroeconomic scale. We measure it in that sense.
Yeah, sure. Of course, we do need some. I would say some basic needs. We need them to be fulfilled. But if earning too much money is the goal, I think probably there are other ways to do it. I don't know. I really never was interested in it, even though, of course, I'm very much in favor of fair payment and compensation for fair work. And amount of time you spend in your education is, of course, like having a master's degree, Ph.D. degree, university diploma. Of course, that should be somewhat rewarded, right? Because it makes you productive, knowledgeable, mastering all these topics. And of course, there has to be a decent, fair payment and compensation for that. But how much more you can make, of course, it might be a choice of a different career or something like that, but definitely not academia.
I think first of all, it's a great note to end on, and it's also a great advice. And maybe the last thing I would kind of want to hear is, if you have to, so this is wonderful, like wonderful advice, but if you can give one general advice to prospective students, maybe someone who's still in their high school years and who may or may not be even thinking about coming here to AUBG, what would you kind of suggest in their case?
I think AUBG provides, because of the liberal arts tradition, gives students a great opportunity to explore where their genuine interests lie. And I am, again, very, very confident about the way AUBG will contribute to their future career paths and their growth as a human being and in their future prospective careers. I think AUBG really is going to make a major difference, because not only it will provide an opportunity for them to explore what they really are or they are interested in, but at the same time, once they identify that, with our help, the faculty members in particular, and with our classes, the courses we offer in our curriculum, I think they are going to get a rigorous training to be well prepared as a person, as a well-rounded person, to go into the job market or to pursue different careers. I think yes, it has great opportunities to actually provide for the young people, especially high school graduates.
I think that's a wonderful note to end it on. Thank you so much for talking to me.
You're welcome.
And I will see you in class.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Don't forget the homework.
I will not.